Hi everyone, please subscribe my YouTube channel. I received my grandmother's secluded private island through inheritance. But my aunt proclaimed, "I'll be putting it on the market. You have no use for it," right before I could object. Grandmother's attorney revealed a concealed provision that left her yelling because I was seated in my grandmother's attorney's office, still attempting to absorb what I'd just been told. The atmosphere seemed dense, oppressive, as if the entire space had halted in place. Opposite me, my Aunt Diane reclined in her seat, sporting the most arrogant look I'd ever witnessed. She'd hardly allowed the attorney to complete reciting the will when she declared, "I'll be putting it on the market. You have no use for it." She was referring to the secluded island my grandmother had just bequeathed to me. Initially, I figured I'd misunderstood her. I looked over at the attorney, Mr. Carmichael, a long-time family acquaintance, but his expression gave nothing away. I shifted back to Diane. "Pardon me?" She grinned slyly. "The island, you have no use for it. It's overwhelming for you to manage, and I possess the contacts to offload it at a solid value. I'll handle everything." She phrased it as though it was already settled, as if she possessed the power to disregard my grandmother's intentions, as if I wasn't even relevant in this choice. I sensed my gut churning. I understood Diane sufficiently to grasp what was unfolding. She'd always operated like this, self-important, scheming, and utterly reluctant to acknowledge that the universe didn't orbit around her. But prior to when I could even counter, prior to when I could utter a single syllable, Mr. Carmichael serenely delved into his portfolio and extracted another packet. A hefty one, closed with my grandmother's individual wax emblem. He positioned it on the desk, fine-tuned his spectacles, and stated in a steady voice, "In fact, Diane, you won't be offloading anything." Diane's grin wavered. "What?" Mr. Carmichael meticulously cracked the seal, withdrew a pile of papers, and started reciting. "To my dear grandson, I bequeath Seabreeze Island in full, with the stipulation that he is its legitimate and exclusive proprietor. Nevertheless, if Diane endeavors to meddle in any manner, whether through pressure, litigation, or deception, she shall promptly surrender all leftover properties allocated to her in my will." Quiet. Then Diane emitted a harsh, resentful chuckle. "That's absurd. You can't be for real." Mr. Carmichael didn't even flinch. "Your mother was entirely for real." Diane's complexion had turned utterly crimson. I could observe her palms quivering as she clutched the chair's armrests. She pivoted to me, her tone escalating. "You don't even desire the island. Why should you receive it? It's valued at millions. What are you planning to do with it?" I parted my lips, but Mr. Carmichael interjected fluidly. "That's beside the point. The island is his. You cannot lay a finger on it." Diane pounded her palm on the desk. "This is outrageous." She was elderly. She wasn't aware of her actions. Mr. Carmichael scarcely responded. "Your mother was mentally competent when she drafted this. The papers were examined, executed, and attested. This is enforceable by law." Diane's respiration became abrupt and uneven. "So what am I expected to do?" Mr. Carmichael removed his spectacles and locked eyes with her. "Honor your mother's desires." Her mouth tightened into a narrow streak. Her gaze flicked toward me, brimming with pure rage. I could practically detect her mindset. This isn't finished. And I recognized she was serious. Because Diane wasn't the sort to retreat. She was going to battle this, and she was going to fight unfairly. Diane bolted from the attorney's office that day, but I realized this wasn't the conclusion. I wasn't mistaken. Under a week later, the phone calls commenced. At the outset, it was a lone, unidentified caller. I disregarded it. Then another. And another. When I eventually answered, a gentleman on the line presented himself as a property developer. "I understand you received a stunning island," he remarked suavely. "I have purchasers ready. I can turn you into a multimillionaire instantly." I furrowed my brow. "I never listed it for sale." "Oh, I realize," he replied. "But I was informed you might be convinced." I disconnected. The following day, I received 3 additional calls, then 5, then 10. Everyone was some entrepreneur or property broker proposing to purchase the island. Some were courteous, some were insistent, and one even turned hostile, stating it would be unfortunate if the island turned into more of a hassle than an asset. A warning. I didn't require brilliance to deduce who orchestrated this. Diane. She was attempting to coerce me into offloading. She must have been contacting these individuals, circulating rumors that I was pondering a bid, aiming to flood me with so many proposals that I'd surrender. It merely strengthened my resolve. I wasn't offloading. That's when matters intensified. One dawn, I arose to a bulky envelope in my post box, labeled from a legal practice I'd never encountered. Within was an official notice of challenge. Diane was disputing the will. She was asserting that grandmother was not mentally competent when she composed it, that the island ought to have gone to her because she was more accountable and better equipped to oversee it. It was comical. I contacted Mr. Carmichael right away. He wasn't shocked. She's clutching at illusions, he noted. She can dispute it, but the will is unbreakable. The tribunals will discard this. Yet I had to endure the procedure. Weeks elapsed. Legal submissions, court appearances, debates. Diane appeared at every session in total theatrics, blotting her eyes as if she were some sorrowful sufferer. She informed the magistrate I was too immature and reckless to oversee the island. She fabricated tales about how grandmother had desired her to possess it, but that I had schemed against her in her later years. She fibbed outright, but she hadn't anticipated one element. Grandmother had filmed a recording. During the ultimate session, Mr. Carmichael extracted a flash drive and connected it to the courtroom display. And there was grandmother, vibrant, keen, and addressing the lens directly. If you're viewing this, Diane is attempting to rob from my grandson. Diane's complexion paled. Grandmother proceeded. Allow me to be perfectly explicit. I did not overlook you, Diane. I simply understand you. If you're causing a scene, it indicates you attempted to scheme your path into something that was never yours. The island belongs to my grandson. If you attempt to seize it, I have one last revelation for you. She grinned. Even from the afterlife, she held the advantage. Then, Mr. Carmichael passed the magistrate one ultimate paper, a concealed provision in the will. Diane wasn't merely going to forfeit the legacy she already possessed. She had to reimburse every penny she had withdrawn from grandmother's holdings over the years. Every extravagant getaway, every buck expended from the family fund, she was indebted for it all. Diane shrieked in the courtroom, but the magistrate affirmed everything. Her claim rejected, her funds evaporating, her schemes utterly ruined. But even that wasn't the finish, because Diane, she wasn't finished yet. I assumed Diane was done after she embarrassed herself in the tribunal. I assumed forfeiting her legacy and being compelled to repay thousands to the holdings would suffice to force her to quit. I was incorrect, because the true ordeal was only starting. After the tribunal matter, I at last had opportunity to explore the island. I had no clue what to anticipate. I'd only viewed it in aged snapshots, dense verdant woods, jagged bluffs, an ancient beacon that hadn't operated in decades. But upon arrival, I sensed something amiss. There was a vessel moored at the beach, a vessel that wasn't mine. Somebody was already present. I alighted on the island, pulse racing, surveying the foliage. All was silent. No noises except the sea and the breeze. Then afar I spotted motion. A silhouette vanishing into the foliage. I shouted, "Hello?" No reply. I retrieved my phone to alert the authorities, but naturally no reception. That's when I noticed it. A notice fastened to one of the trunks near the vintage residence. A sheet of paper with large, prominent characters. Leave. And below, a deceased fish fastened to the trunk with a corroded blade. I captured images, returned to my vessel, and headed directly to the authorities. They weren't very assistive. Rural Maine officers don't precisely leap to probe a strange sensation and a deceased fish. Might have been youths, they claimed. Might have been an angler pulling a prank, but I knew otherwise. This bore Diane's signature everywhere. She failed legally, so now she was attempting another tactic. She was trying to frighten me off. A week afterward, I returned to the island. This time I wasn't solo. I brought a pal, James, a former colleague who had background in protection services. We installed a few concealed recorders around the residence and pier, and it was fortunate we did, because that evening, the residence ignited. We were both dozing when the odor struck me, dense fumes drifting under the entrance. The blaze detector was blaring. I flung open the entrance to discover flames creeping up the partitions of the lounge. James seized the blaze suppressor, but it was overdue. The entire flank of the residence was ablaze. We scarcely escaped promptly, and as we dashed outdoors, I glimpsed a form sprinting into the foliage. Somebody had been present. Somebody had ignited the blaze. The subsequent morning, we reviewed the recordings, and there it was. A fuzzy, dark form advancing toward the residence around midnight. They spilled something along the partition, fuel. Then a spark of an igniter, and the blaze erupted alive. The authorities were quite engaged now. They collected the recordings and initiated a probe. And guess who was the prime suspect? Diane. But here's where events got truly convoluted. Because when the authorities went to interrogate her, she had vanished. Her residence, cleared out overnight, her financial accounts, emptied. It was as if she had evaporated into nothingness. She wasn't merely trying to seize the island. She was fleeing from something, and I was about to discover what. Diane vanishing wasn't just odd, it was dubious as heck. This lady had expended months combating me for this island. She had squandered thousands on legal experts, staged a meltdown in the tribunal, and even attempted to intimidate me with warnings and ignition. And now, after igniting my residence, she was just absent. I wasn't accepting it. Something was wrong. The authorities were hunting for her, but I knew they wouldn't exert much energy. To them, she was just some resentful aunt who forfeited her legacy. So I engaged a private detective. James, my pal who had accompanied me on the island, had some enforcement links. He suggested a man, Harris. Harris was a seasoned, straightforward type who had witnessed everything. When I recounted the tale, he merely whistled. So your aunt's a scheming crook, attempted to perpetrate deceit, ignited a blaze, and now she's fled. He laughed. I've encountered this previously. She's fleeing because she owes somebody funds. I hadn't considered that. Diane had always existed beyond her resources. Costly trips, high-end vehicles, couture attire. But how was she funding all that? Harris began probing. It didn't require much time before he uncovered something major. Turns out Diane was submerged in obligations. Charge cards exhausted, borrowings in default. And the direst aspect, she had secured dubious borrowings from perilous individuals. The sort of individuals who don't tolerate delayed repayments kindly. She had been frantic to offload the island because she required a quick windfall to settle her obligations. And when she failed the tribunal matter, when she grasped she was receiving zilch, she had one choice remaining: flee. Now that I understood what was transpiring, I had a concept. Diane was concealing, but she wouldn't remain absent eternally. She required funds. And she was foolish enough to believe she could still acquire something from the island. So I arranged a snare. I had Harris disseminate a phony gossip on the internet. An entry on a property discussion board stating proprietor of Seabreeze Island pondering a discreet transaction, purely under the table, seeking substantial cash purchasers. It didn't require much time. A week afterward, I received a ring. A restricted number. I answered, didn't utter a sound. I learned you might be offloading. Diane. She swallowed the lure. I feigned cooperation. I behaved reluctant, said I might be open to offloading under the proper terms. Diane pounced on it. She was avaricious, and avarice renders people careless. We consented to convene face-to-face, a secluded site. She was cautious, anxious, but she was also frantic. She required funds, and I had a strategy. I collaborated with Harris and the authorities to arrange an ambush setup. The instant Diane arrived at the rendezvous point, believing she was about to bargain for the island, the officers descended. She attempted to bolt, but it was finished. Turns out, Diane had more than just obligation pursuers trailing her. She had been engaged in deceit, misappropriation, and even persona robbery. She had pilfered hundreds of thousands from folks, secured deceptive borrowings, and was sought in several regions. The moment the officers had her detained, it all collapsed. She was doomed. No legacy, no funds, and now, incarceration. After Diane was apprehended, I at last returned to the island. This time it seemed altered. No warnings. No unfamiliar vessels. No blazes, just tranquility. I repaired the residence. I refurbished the ancient beacon. I even established a modest getaway area for folks seeking to flee the turmoil of the world. The island wasn't merely a plot of terrain. It was my grandmother's heritage, and thanks to Diane's foolishness, it was now entirely secure from individuals like her eternally. And the greatest aspect, Diane passed the remainder of her existence incarcerated, observing everything she ever craved escape through her grasp.